Me and Jolene scrapped. Jolene was not happy with me. Colton started fighting with his woman also. Roller coaster without a seatbelt.
Chad Hiltz just confirmed what fans had suspected for years, and it's more controversial than anyone expected. What fans saw as harmless creativity on Bad Chad Customs was actually hiding decisions, tensions, and behind-the-scenes moments that never made it to air. The reality of how builds were done, what was allowed, and what pushed people to their limits is far more complicated than the show ever let on. So what exactly did Chad Hiltz finally admit? And why is it changing how fans see the show today? Join us as we uncover the truth behind what was really going on, who Bad Chad actually is before the cameras arrived. Chad Hiltz was just a little boy who grew up in Kingsport, Nova Scotia, Canada. The family were Australian immigrants who had settled in the rural Annapolis Valley of Nova Scotia, a part of Canada that most people outside of the maritime provinces could not place on a map. Chad grew up in that specific geographic isolation, the kind that forces a certain kind of creative problem-solving, because you cannot just drive to a parts store and pick up what you need. What you can do is look at what you have and figure out what it can become. That skill, the ability to look at junk and see potential finished products, is not something someone learns in a classroom. It developed over years of necessity, and Chad had decades of necessity before anyone pointed a camera at him. He became a father for the first time at 16 years old. That is not a biographical footnote. It is a fact that shaped the next 30 years of his life in ways that are still visible in how he talks about his son Colton and their complicated relationship on the show. Becoming a parent at 16 in rural Nova Scotia with no money and no particular plan is the kind of life event that either destroys a person or forces them to develop a ferocious internal discipline around whatever they are good at. For Chad, the thing he was good at was building things out of other things. He married twice before he was 30. The first marriage produced a daughter. The second marriage, contracted at 27, produced Colton, born in 1998. Both marriages ended. There was also a relationship with a woman named Masher that lasted from 1999 to around 2004 and produced his daughter, Harley. He was not, by any accounting, someone whose personal life was running smoothly during this period. He kept building cars. "I made sure that every mistake I made, I learned something and moved forward," he has said. That philosophy, applied with apparent sincerity across decades of difficulty, is what produced the builder that Discovery found. The shop that became the backdrop of Bad Chad Customs was originally called Green Goblin Customs, named after his most famous creation, a custom hot rod built around the visual language of the Marvel villain. The Green Goblin car won multiple awards at car shows across North America and established Chad as someone whose work operated at a different level than the average small-town garage. At his first American show, World of Wheels, he won 3 awards. At the Castrol Radical Speed Sports Show, he won 4. He earned the Master Builder Award at the Boston Show. These were not participation trophies at regional events. These were competitive wins against professional builders with bigger budgets and better-equipped shops. He was doing it with coat hangers and scrap metal, and a mind that does not recognize the concept of a build that cannot be done. A man who builds award-winning cars from junk in a town most Canadians cannot name, who became a father at 16 and kept working through 2 marriages and everything that followed, eventually attracts attention from people with cameras. How did Discovery Channel find Chad Hiltz, and what happened when they did? How Discovery found him, and what changed overnight. The path from rural Nova Scotia to a Discovery Channel series is not one that has a single obvious route. Chad's case started with the cars. Word spread through the custom car community. the kind of tight and well-connected network that exists around car shows and exhibitions, about a builder in the Annapolis Valley who was doing things that nobody else was doing with materials that nobody else would touch. The reputation arrived at the show's producers before Chad did. Discovery came looking for him, not the other way around, which is the kind of origin story that matters when you are trying to understand why the show felt different from other car builds. It was built around a personality that existed before the cameras arrived, rather than one that was constructed for them. Jolene McIntyre, Chad's fiancée, and the person who became his shop manager and the organizational backbone of everything, was instrumental in turning the initial interest into a deal. She had a business background that Chad did not, a bachelor's degree in commerce from St. Mary's University in Halifax, which is an unusual credential for a car shop manager in Canning, Nova Scotia, and also exactly the credential you want when you are sitting across a table from television producers in Los Angeles. Chad and Jolene traveled to LA together before filming began. They attended car shows. They went to SEMA, the automotive industry trade show in Las Vegas that is the Super Bowl of the car world, and announced the program there. Discovery's promotional schedule for the show was extensive, and they powered through all of it. Jolene was the person who kept the external-facing side of the operation coherent, while Chad kept building things in the shop. The show launched on Discovery Channel in 2019, and the response was immediate and generally enthusiastic among the custom car community. Critics who reviewed it were divided, but the people who watched it for reasons beyond critical evaluation found something genuinely refreshing about its approach. No enormous professional workshop, no team of specialists, no access to unlimited parts budgets. Just a man in a hand-built shop in rural Canada building impossibly creative machines from things other people threw away. The name change from Green Goblin Customs to Hiltz Auto Company happened because of copyright concerns around the Green Goblin character, which is a detail that tells you something about the level of success Chad had reached. He had gotten famous enough using that name that the intellectual property question became worth addressing. Season 2 aired in August 2020. And then the show stopped. The show got good reviews, built a following, completed 2 seasons, and then simply disappeared from Discovery's schedule without a clear public explanation. What actually happened to Bad Chad Customs? And why did it take so long for anyone to get a straight answer? The cancellation nobody fully explained. The second season of Bad Chad Customs finished airing in August 2020, and no third season has appeared since. Discovery Channel did not make a formal cancellation announcement. There was no statement from the network explaining why the show was not returning. There was no farewell from the production company. The show simply stopped getting new episodes scheduled, the way shows stop when the network decides it does not want to pay for more, but also does not want to generate negative press by making the cancellation official. Chad and his team continued working. Hiltz Auto Company remained open. The builds continued, but the cameras were gone. The reasons circulating in media coverage of the cancellation are a mixture of confirmed and speculative. Production costs were cited by some outlets as a factor. Making television in Canada for American audiences involves logistical expenses that shows filmed in major U.S. markets do not face, and Discovery has historically been quick to cut projects where the return on investment is not clearly favorable. Ratings information for Bad Chad Customs was never publicly released by Discovery in any form that allowed outside observers to assess how the show performed against the network's expectations. Without that data, the question of whether the show underperformed is genuinely unanswerable from the outside. What can be said with more confidence is that Chad Hiltz's name had become associated with some legal complications in the period following the first season, though the specific details of those complications have never been fully or publicly aired. Various outlets cited legal issues as a contributing factor to the cancellation without being able to document exactly what those issues involved. The combination of a non-renewable by Discovery and the cloud of unspecified legal complications created the specific type of television death that is harder to process than a clean cancellation. Not officially over, but no longer functioning. Not confirmed dead, but not demonstrably alive. Chad has not made major public statements about the situation. Jolene, who had been the show's most visible external-facing presence, effectively withdrew from the public role she had occupied during the show's run. The shop kept working. The social media presence maintained itself, but the version of Chad Hiltz that had been on a Discovery Channel show and promoted it at SEMA was gone. The show ended without a proper conclusion, and the reasons behind it remain partially obscured by the standard opacity of the television industry. But the thing that viewers who followed Bad Chad customs closely actually wanted to know was simpler than any industry question. What happened to Chad and Jolene, and what has Chad been doing since the cameras left? The relationship and what the show never fully showed. Jolene McIntyre was not incidental to Bad Chad customs. She was the second lead. Technically, her role was listed as shop manager, and she was genuinely running the operational side of Hiltz Auto Company. Scheduling, client communication, keeping the business functional while Chad's mind was on whatever build was currently consuming his attention. But on screen, she was also the person who provided the emotional counterweight to Chad's intensity. He was the creative force. She was the grounding presence. The dynamic was watchable not because it was performed for cameras, but because it was real. Two people who had been together for years, who had built a business together, who had traveled to Los Angeles and Las Vegas together to sell their story to a television network, and who were trying to figure out how to exist inside the machine they had invited into their lives. Chad had become engaged to Jolene in 2016, 3 years before the show premiered. By the time Discovery found them, they had already been a professional partnership, as well as a personal one, for long enough that the relationship had texture and history that the show could not fully capture in episodes. Jolene had her own complications. She had come from a commercial background, had a university degree, and had chosen to use it running a car shop in rural Nova Scotia, rather than pursuing the career it most obviously pointed toward. That choice was not incidental. It was a statement about what she valued and where she wanted to be, and it was directly tied to her relationship with Chad. After the show stopped airing, Jolene's public presence diminished significantly. She had been active on social media during the show's run and in the promotional period surrounding it. After Season 2, that activity tapered off. The reasons for this have not been publicly stated. Fans who watched the show noticed the absence, and various YouTube channels and fan communities generated considerable speculation about what had changed between her and Chad. Neither of them addressed the speculation directly in any public forum that produced a clear answer. What Chad's social media presence showed in the period after the show was him continuing to build. Cars in various stages of completion, tools and materials, the shop, and its controlled chaos. Jolene was less visible in that content than she had been during the show's run. The gap was noticeable, and the reason for it remained private. The show ended. The public presence of the couple shifted, and Chad kept working without the structure and the platform that Discovery had provided. What does life for someone like Chad Hiltz actually look like when the production company leaves and the cameras stop? And what has he confirmed that fans had long suspected about the way his story has unfolded? The truth about building cars in the dark. What Chad Hiltz has confirmed in pieces across his YouTube channel and occasional social media activity since the show ended is something that viewers who had paid close attention to Bad Chad Customs had suspected throughout the run. That the show, for all its relative authenticity compared to other car build programs, still operated within constraints that did not fully represent how he actually works and thinks. Television production requires deadlines. It requires things happening in a sequence that makes editorial sense. It requires drama that can be structured around builds that complete in a time frame the format can accommodate. Chad's actual creative process is not like that. He has described working on builds for years, setting something aside, coming back to it, letting an idea sit until the right solution presents itself. That is not how a Discovery Channel season gets made. He has also confirmed, more directly than during the show's run, that the financial reality of running a custom car shop in rural Nova Scotia is genuinely difficult in ways that the television version softened. The show presented Chad as someone who finds brilliant solutions from limited resources, which is accurate. It did not always convey that those solutions are born from a necessity that is sometimes genuinely stressful. Parts availability in the Annapolis Valley is not the same as parts availability in a major metropolitan area. Shipping costs to and from Nova Scotia affect the economics of builds in ways that shops in more central locations do not face. The coat hanger welding wire line is funny on television. The actual experience of making that substitution is the result of a calculation about cost and availability that is not particularly amusing when you are the one making it. The car builds themselves, the physical creations that Chad has been producing for decades, are genuinely extraordinary regardless of any television context. His work incorporating parts from boats, airplanes, and appliances into automobile builds is not a television gimmick. He has been doing this since long before Discovery found him, and he continued doing it after they left. The YouTube channel that Hiltz Auto Co. maintains shows the shop's ongoing work, cars in progress, techniques being demonstrated, the daily reality of a small custom operation in rural Canada. The audience that found him through the show has largely stayed through YouTube, which is arguably a more sustainable relationship between a builder and his audience than a network television deal that can be cancelled without explanation. The YouTube channel is there, the builds continue, the shop is open. But the fuller picture of what Chad Hiltz's life has looked like across the years since Bad Chad Customs disappeared from Discovery's schedule involves more than just cars. What does his relationship with his son Colton actually reveal about who he is outside the professional identity? The father-son dynamic. The most emotionally loaded storyline running through Bad Chad Customs was not actually about any of the car builds. It was about Chad and Colton. Colton Harrison Hiltz was born on August 10, 1998, making him 20 years old when the first season of the show aired. He was working in the shop as an apprentice, learning the trade from his father, doing the unglamorous work that apprentices do. The show documented the dynamic between them. Chad teaches, often impatiently, in the way that people who know something deeply and intuitively sometimes teach it to people who are still building the mental framework for it. Colton learned, pushing back sometimes when he disagreed, working hard in a way that suggested he had inherited his father's stubbornness, along with whatever else the genes had passed along. What the show made clear without ever fully articulating was that this was not just a father-son professional apprenticeship. It was a repair job in progress. Chad had not been consistently present in Colton's life when Colton was young. The show was, in significant part, the public working out of a private debt between a father and the son he had not been there for. Chad has spoken about this obliquely in various formats. He knows he was not around in the ways a child needs a father to be around. He knows the impact that absence had. The decision to bring Colton into the shop and make him a central figure in the show was not primarily a television decision. It was a personal one. Working alongside someone for 12 hours a day in a shared project is one of the most intensive relationship-building mechanisms available to people who are not naturally comfortable with emotional directness. Chad is not a person who sits down and has conversations about feelings. He is a person who builds things. Bringing Colton into that process was his version of saying something that he probably could not say with words. Viewers noticed this and responded to it more powerfully than to the cars themselves, which is not a criticism of the cars, but an observation about what people actually connect with when they watch television. The builds were impressive. The father and son figuring out how to be in the same room was devastating in the quiet way that real things are devastating. Bad Chad Customs worked as a television show because it had genuine emotional stakes underneath the metal and welding sparks. The most honest confirmation Chad has made about his own life is visible not in any public statement, but in the fact that Colton was there, in the shop, learning. That was the choice Chad made. It was, by any measure, the right one. Now that you've heard the full story, do you think fans were right about Chad all along? Or was the show never meant to tell the whole truth? Share your thoughts with us in the comments section. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also, click the next video showing on your screen. You will enjoy it.